Dune, how you doing? You doing good? I'm so tired. But today we're going to be talking about Dune Part 2. It's been out for a while now. And maybe by the time this video comes out, it will be entirely irrelevant. But I still want to talk about it because I went and saw it and I have thoughts. I've seen it twice. So basically, this movie has dominated the internet, at least the part of the internet that I look at, for since it came out, the better part of a month. And yeah, I think it's pretty insane just how much content is being generated about this fucking movie. It's an incredible movie, don't get me wrong, and I think that's part of the reason that there is so much meme groundswell around it, if you will. But to me, it feels like sort of what happened with Barbenheimer, at least in maybe like Top Gun, just like citing recent examples, because those movies are huge, massively expensive blockbusters that cost a whole lot of money and have massive marketing campaigns run by the studios that cost millions of dollars. But alongside that is an online and both word of mouth campaign entirely generated by the audience, who are excited for the movie and want to see it. So they're generating so much online content. I mean, the amount of shit about the Dunussy, the amount of popcorn bucket stuff is just insane. And as long as we're comparing it to Barbenheimer, just in terms of what made that so successful, I think, is that the film industry was in kind of a rocky spot at that time. There were two big ass strikes going on, the actors strike and the writers strike. And also, the summer box office had just been pretty bad. There were a lot of very expensive tentpole movies coming out that nobody was really going to see, like, Transformers, that Indiana Jones movie. I mean, these were all like heavily marketed, very expensive movies that just kind of sank. They weren't like disasters, although in the case of movies like The Flash and Indiana Jones, they very much were disasters. But they just sort of sank, and it was kind of bullshit. But then Barbenheimer came along, and it was this, it was this very interesting new double feature. It was two original creative movies that weren't just kind of sloppy bullshit. It actually seemed like there was something of a voice behind them, and it's the same thing with Dune. I mean, I don't really know what else has been coming out this year so far. Mean Girls, it's been pretty dry. It's been pretty rough. In fact, I think like Wonka and Migration, those two movies have been just stuck on the charts for months because there's nothing major really coming out, and whatever is coming out is kind of underperforming. I mean, you remember Argyle? Remember when that came out 17 fucking months ago? So Dune Part 2 really is the first major release of the year, and that's what all of the press about it has been saying. And so, given that that we've had such an underwhelming start to the year, there was a lot riding on Dune Part 2 because people really wanted something huge and something worth going out to the theater when there was not a whole lot else in the theater. And boy, oh boy, does it deliver. This movie is pretty incredible. It's pretty rare for a movie this expensive and with this many people working on it to be this cohesive and polished. If we're comparing it to recent movies, I hate to bring up The Flash again in the first 5 minutes, but The Flash was I think it had a similar budget, maybe even more, which is hideously embarrassing. But that movie looked like shit, and it looked like it was reshaped and retooled to look and feel like something else in the edit after the fact. It lacked any sort of not vision, I guess. There were a few Andy Machete moments in there, and I don't want to just start going on a tangent about The Flash, but it was very inconsistent, and it was very just ultimately bland and ugly. But this is not that. It is the polar opposite of that. This is one of the most gorgeous looking blockbuster movies to come out since Blade Runner 2049, which Denis Villeneuve also did. Just holy shit. The scale is something that has been talked about to death, and I didn't see it in IMAX. I live in a pretty small town, so the nearest IMAX is several hours away. So I have not been able to catch it in IMAX. But even so, it is one of the most bombastic, maximalist blockbuster movies to come out in a very long time. And I say that in a good way. That's often a bad thing, but in this it is a very, very good thing. The production is just so well thought out. It's on a level with like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is being thrown around a lot on the internet. I'm saying nothing new here, but very, very thorough and very detailed. It's, you know how like when Avatar came out and people were like, oh, I want to go back to Pandora. Oh, when the movie was over, I cried because I didn't want to leave. I watched those movies and I'm just like, this is kind of boring, and I can see the pretty visuals and I can see the world, and it's very realized, the visual side of it is, but it doesn't feel lived in. Nothing is very tactile. It's all very just sort of psychedelic album art looking. There's no substance there. But with the world of Dune, it is so rich and so thorough, and there's so much history there, and it really comes through. The southern portions of Arrakis that they go to, that big temple inside of the rock, the rock face was just incredible. It looked just so old, and I don't know if it was CGI or what, because the visual effects in this movie are outstanding, like a major improvement over the first one. And I didn't even think the first one had terrible visual effects, but this one was just, oh my god, it was absolutely seamless between live action elements and CG elements. I can't wait to see a behind the scenes featurette on the Blu-ray. Just would watch endless hours of footage of how they put this together, because it's really impressive what they've pulled off here. And not only that, but the way that they've managed to adapt the second half of the book to the screen here is very impressive and much better than it's ever been done. At least the ones that I've seen. I have not seen the miniseries version from, what was that, like the 90s, the early 2000s? I don't know, maybe that's good. But the David Lynch version, it just completely falls apart in the second half, and that's well known. But it has so much room to breathe here. This movie's nearly 3 hours long, and it absolutely flies by because every scene is plot relevant. There's not an ounce of fat on the entire thing, and it keeps building and building right from where we left off with part one. One of the biggest issues that I had with part one was just the full stop ending. I thought that was very frustrating watching it in the theater, because I knew that I had to wait multiple years, and even at the time we didn't even know if there was going to be a second one or not. So I was that was even more frustrating, because then it's like, well, shit, what if that's just how it ends forever? But thankfully that's not what happened. Now, I started reading the first book in the Dune series when the first movie came out a couple of years ago. I finished it after I had seen the movie, but the way that they adapt the second half of the book here, there's some interesting things that they leave out. It's been a couple years since I read it, but I do remember that there was a pretty substantial time skip towards the middle of the book. I think it's like 5 years, 7 years, or maybe that's closer to the end. Anyhow, that doesn't happen in the movie. It pretty much picks up right where the first one left off. Maybe a few hours have passed. There's like an eclipse and stuff. The Emperor of the Universe is just now finding out that the Atreides have been wiped out. It's right back into it, and there's a very short sort of recap that Florence Pugh gives at the beginning, but I feel like if you hadn't seen the first movie, that would not help you at all. because it really just throws you right back into it and it does not hold your hand. So from what I remember in the book, after that time skip, Paul and Chani have a son, and Jessica gives birth to Alia, her daughter, who has the memories of all of the thousands of generations of Reverend Mothers, which is one of the most just far out fucked up sci-fi concepts I've ever heard of. And we see that in the David Lynch version, sort of a little girl running around talking like a wise old sage. It's pretty unsettling and at times pretty silly. So I think it was kind of a wise inclusion to leave that out of this movie, because I just don't know how you'd adapt that to not be inherently kind of comedic with the super dark, sort of brutalist, serious tone that these movies have been going for. So overall, I think that was a good exclusion, and I do think that the foreshadowing that they do with like the vision sequence with Anya Taylor-Joy, it's an interesting foreshadowing to Dune Messiah, which you couldn't adapt that without doing the time skip that book does. So hopefully that gets made. I know that pretty much everyone involved with the movie has said that they want to take a little bit of a break. But with how much this movie is making, how well this film is doing at the box office, I think it is almost inevitable that we'll see that part 3 eventually. So let's talk about performances. I think my favorite performance out of the entire movie was Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica, who is absolutely fucking terrifying. No one else that I have spoken to about this movie thinks that found it as scary as I did, but I honestly found her character specifically, but really just any of the Bene Gesserit characters, to be weirdly terrifying, especially when they were using the voice. I mean, like, no matter what house you're seeing it in, whether it's IMAX or whether it's like some dinky little fucking, whether you're watching it on your TV, that's gonna be loud and abrasive, and it's, oh my gosh, that's amazing sound design there. But yeah, overall, Rebecca Ferguson does an incredible job of playing this woman who has no idea what she's really getting into, but trying to, manipulate it to her will, whilst also going insane and talking to her fetus, and just incredible work from her there. I also really enjoyed Austin Butler as Fade Rotha. I thought he was really gross, which, that's the point of the Harkonnens, or the someone commented on my video that I did of the first one, saying that I was pronouncing Harkonnen wrong. And you know what? I will concede, and I will say Harkonnen. So Austin Butler plays Fade Rotha Harkonnen, and he does a very good job. The whole point of House Harkonnen in the book, to me, was that they are just disgusting weirdos. Everything that we find dirty and gross and inhumane, they find beautiful and often sexy, and they often find each other very sexy, even when they are in their own family. And they're very violent, and Austin Butler just encapsulates all of that, even the sexy part. Encapsulates it very well. Sohaila Yacob, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which I'm not. She's a Swiss actress. She was in Climax back in 2018, which is a movie that I really love, and I was very delighted to see her in this. I hope that she gets more work because of this movie, and this movie's success, because she was really good, and I was happy to see her. Who else? Timothée Chalamet was okay. I rewatched the first movie before seeing this one, and I thought that he was bad in that movie, mainly because his character just has nothing to do. The entire plot just sort of happens to him, and he just makes the same face the whole time and says every line the same way. I'm from a different planet. You're my mother, and I have visions and I dream, and that just gets old. But he has a lot more to do in this movie. His character actually kind of grows and progresses, which is cool. Zendaya was really good. as Chani in this one. She also gets a lot more to do. She's in the movie way more. I think she was in the movie for like 7 minutes in part 1. She's in almost every scene in this movie, I think. And yeah, she's really good. I think the script is doing a lot of work to give her character more agency than she did in the book, because in the book and by extension, like the David Lynch movie, her character just is immediately just like in love with Paul and like, you know, swooning over him and sort of never even begins to doubt him. And it's you know, it's I don't know, take that as you will, which is poorly. But yeah, her character is way better in this movie. I think, you know, just because of the way that the story has to go, she doesn't have a very complete arc, which hopefully they can resolve in the third movie. Her arc in Dune Messiah is kind of just like she loves Paul and then she gets pregnant and dies, and that's her character. So hopefully they do a little work there. But nonetheless, Zendaya is still really, really good in this movie. Javier Bardem as Stilgar is just, you know, I think it's a good performance, but the character is just sometimes just a total silly goose, and I kind of love that, and I think Javier handles that well, and I'm excited to see more of him. See, I've started reading Children of Dune, not very far into it, but I hope that one gets adapted in some format or another, simply because I want to keep seeing Javier Bardem as Stilgar. He's one of my favorite parts of these movies. I thought the music was a lot better. Not that I know much about music, but I thought that the sort of more industrial like rock sounds, like the you know that sort of shit, it worked a lot better in this movie than it did in part 1. I still enjoy you know, like the bagpipe stuff. That's pretty cool. That's pretty much gone from this movie. I guess Hans didn't care much about that. The throat singing stuff is still kind of, you know, but it's still there in this movie, but it's quiet. It's very low in the mix, and I think that's a good thing. So yeah, overall, this is a really, really good movie. In terms of like how it compares to part 1, I think it massively improves upon pretty much everything, if not everything. And yeah, I think, you know, we could get a part 3. I really want there to be a part 3, but unlike the first film, I am not I would not be like angry if it ended here, because the story does end in a conclusive manner here, which it doesn't in the first one. This is where the book ended, and so, like, you know, it feels like, oh, okay, it could keep going from here, and the story is telling you that it is. But if it doesn't, I'm happy to just infer it with my mind, because this was a total blast and an absolute ride, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Dune Part 2. Oh yeah, and another thing before I go, the marketing for this movie sucks. Just like the first one, they show every single scene from the entire fucking movie in the trailers, and that's lame. That's lame. Stop doing that, movie trailer houses. That's stupid. There are so many great action set pieces in the first half of this movie that you could have done for your trailers. You don't have to show the final fucking scene of the movie in your trailer. Anyway, go see this movie if you haven't already. See it on a really big screen, because apparently the 4K Blu-ray isn't going to have the IMAX aspect ratio, which kind of ruined my day when I heard that. But that's besides the point. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Leave a comment. Leave 5 comments to boost engagement, but make sure that they're unique. I don't want to have any unoriginality in my comments section. All right, that's it. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go take a nap.